Ever feel like you're just drowning in information? You're consuming everything you can get your hands on, books, courses, podcasts, but then, when it's time to actually use that knowledge, there's nothing, just fog. It feels like you're learning all the time, but retaining almost zero. Look, this isn't a personal failure. It's not about your work ethic, and it's definitely not about your IQ. It's a system error. And today, we're going to deconstruct that error and install a brand new operating system for mastery. We are going to build the Scaffold engine.
All right, so here's our game plan for this upgrade. First, we're going to expose what I call the hallucination of consumption, this core illusion that's holding you back. Then, we'll diagnose the specific glitch in your blueprint that's got you trapped in this endless novice loop. After that, we'll install the three-part Scaffold Engine Protocol. We'll gack it all up with some hard neuroscience, walk you through your very first practical audit, and finally, help you step into your new identity as an architect of your own intellect.
So let's start with the central paradox that is absolutely sabotaging your performance. We've all been taught that the path to mastery is just paved with more content, more hours, more data. But what if that very approach is the exact reason you feel like you're just spinning your wheels? What if more is actually making you less effective? This, my friends, is the hallucination of consumption.
This quote just nails the fundamental misunderstanding we have about learning. We think learning is an act of acquisition, of just stuffing more things in. It's not. Real learning is structural. It's an automatic reaction to what's already there. You know that game-changing idea you heard yesterday? It didn't vanish because you're forgetful. Nope. It vanished because it showed up in your mind, found nowhere to hang, and just fell straight to the floor. Gone.
This whole system error starts with a lie we've all been sold, the lie of passive learning. It's this idea that success is just a numbers game. You know, if you just read enough books, watch enough videos, the most important ideas will somehow magically stick. We treat our minds like these static warehouses, just hoping we can find the right box when we need it. But this isn't just an ineffective strategy. It is neurologically backward.
So here's what's really happening. Pouring unstructured information into your mind doesn't just fail, it actually triggers a biological defense mechanism. See, your brain is a ruthless energy miser. It runs on a super strict metabolic budget. It cannot afford to store every random piece of data you throw at it, so it runs a conservation script. Any fact, any idea, any insight that doesn't have a hook to hang on to is flagged as metabolically expensive junk. Your brain then literally purges that data to protect its energy.
And this biological purge, well, it creates a very distinct and draining feeling. Information panic. To your nervous system, a flood of unlinked data is basically a threat. It's treated as a direct metabolic attack on your executive function. That anxiety you feel when you're starting a complex project, that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, that's your brain's threat detector screaming at you that you are burning precious glucose on information that has no structure and therefore no value.
So how does this neurological glitch actually show up in the real world? This isn't just some fleeting feeling. It's a systemic neural hijack that traps even the highest performers in this frustrating repeating cycle, a cycle that keeps you from ever achieving true confident mastery.
We call this the silo glitch. Your brain, at its core, is a prediction machine. So when it sees isolated, unconnected facts, these data silos, it predicts their useless noise and triggers that metabolic cleanup. You experience this as that heavy novice fog. You know that feeling, right? When you start a new project and you have this overwhelming urge to go back to the absolute basics because you feel like you've forgotten everything from last month. It's not a bad memory. It's a feature, not a bug, of a brain that's just trying to save you from intellectual bankruptcy.
And this right here reveals a massive, painful mismatch between your ambitions and your brain's default operating system. You're out here trying to build a legacy, but your brain is acting like a sieve, just letting all the valuable stuff slip right through. You're aiming for that sweet compound interest of deep knowledge, but you're actually just racking up metabolic debt. You're trying to gain more height in your career, but neurologically, you're just treading water, burning energy just to stay afloat.
And this is the trap of the novice's loop. It starts with that feeling of not knowing enough, so you push for more consumption. But since that new info has no structure, it only increases your confusion. This confusion is a huge red flag for your brain, which then triggers the metabolic cleanup to save energy. And over time, this creates a state of conditioned amnesia. Your brain literally learns that new information equals metabolic debt and confusion. It learns to forget.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's a systemic glitch in the blueprint. Now, for the good part. Here's how we fix it. We are going to manually burn those silos to the ground.
we're shifting from the passive, high-friction strategy of consumption to the active, architectural construction of knowledge. This is the blueprint for intellectual velocity.
Think of this as a major RAM upgrade for your mastery. The Scaffold Engine protocol is built on 3 pillars that will turn your fragmented knowledge into a precision grid. First, the Axiom Audit, where you stop collecting random facts and start identifying the foundational laws. Second, Analogous Engineering, where you build relational bridges to what you already know. And third, Structure Compounding, where you literally rewire your brain to reward the connection between ideas, not just the collection of them.
So the first pillar, the Axiom Audit, it requires a huge shift in your questioning. You stop asking, what is the fact, and you start asking, what is the law? In any field, there are just a few core foundational rules, the gravity of the subject, that govern everything else. So your first job is not to collect information, but to architect the core. You find these axioms and you build the center of your mental map. Everything else will attach to this.
All right, once you've got your core laws, you engage in analogical engineering. This is where you give your brain the hooks it is so desperately crying out for. You actively create relational anchors. You use metaphors or mental models to make a new, totally alien concept look like just a simple variation of an old, comfortable win. Like maybe you frame a new concept as the supply and demand of neuroscience. That simple act stops the silo veto, telling your brain, hey, this is safe, this belongs here.
And finally, we have structure compounding. This is where you stop learning in isolation and you start hunting for connections. Your main reward, that dopamine hit you're looking for, it no longer comes from finding some shiny new fact. No, it comes from activating a link between 2 ideas, from seeing how axiom A connects to concept B. This is the difference between trying to carry 1,000 loose pebbles versus cementing them together to build a single solid stone of understanding. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't just some clever mindset hack. The Scaffold Engine is a protocol that is engineered to work with the hard science of your neurobiology. It's built on metabolic reality. When you do this, you are physically changing how your brain processes and stores information.
See, when you feed your brain a bunch of isolated facts, you activate the Anterior Cingulate Cortex, or ACC. This is the brain's conflict and error detector. It triggers dread and is incredibly expensive energy-wise. But when you build these scaffolded frameworks, you shift activity over to the Medial Prefrontal Cortex, or MPSC. This is the seat of integration, of coherence. It's a low-energy state where your brain actually feels safe to connect ideas.
And get this, here is the immediate payoff. The moment you shift from isolated facts to scaffolded frameworks, the brain's forgetting signal, that biological purge we talked about, it drops by up to 40%. Instantly. This isn't some gradual improvement. It is an immediate upgrade to your intellectual throughput. You stop wasting energy relearning and you start investing it in compounding your next move.
Okay, let's make this real. We're taking this out of the realm of theory and putting it into direct, practical action that you can use in your very next learning session. I mean, today.
So how do you actually begin? How do you architect your first scaffold, instead of just falling back into that old habit of consuming more and more content? Well, it starts with a very deliberate, focused protocol that protects the purity of your foundation.
Here are your first 3 steps. 1. Before you even start learning something new, identify the 3 most foundational axioms or laws of that subject. Just write them down. 2. For the first 10 minutes of your session, you are only allowed to explain how those 3 axioms connect to things you already understand. You're just warming up the grid. And 3. Use the silo sieve. At the end of your session, look at your notes and be ruthless. Delete any fact that has not been explicitly linked back to one of your core laws.
The goal here is to prioritize the velocity of connection over the volume of consumption. Grinding through more pages and more videos, that is the old, broken model. The new model is about architecting the hook first. Spend your energy making that landing spot perfect, and the information will stick effortlessly. You're not working harder, you're seeing deeper.
Okay, let's zoom all the way out and really solidify the new identity that this framework gives you. You are no longer a passive consumer of information, a victim of the content fire hose. You are an active designer. You are an architect.
This right here is the ultimate takeaway. Your struggle with learning has never been about a lack of intelligence. It has always been a hardware problem, an issue of structure and architecture. Greatness isn't defined by how much you can consume, it's defined by how well you can build. You are the chief executive of your own mind. Your job is to design and build the scaffolding that lets your genius reach its full height.
This is your new mantra, your call to action. Take your hardest subject, the one that always fills you with that familiar novice fog. Do an Axiom audit right now. Find its unique foundational law. Find the hook. Activate the scaffold. Because once you master the art of building these structures, your learning becomes this unstoppable high-resolution force. Build the scaffold, and then go claim the impact you were meant to make.